Part one of the offseason, how they can help series, looking at Pacers' new players and how they could help the Pacers win games, diving deeper into their strengths for James Wiseman, Swider, and a little bit of Quenton Jackson, all on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Thursday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today we are diving into some of the newer Pacers in part one of a two-parter off-season series, the How They Can Help series. I started this last year. It came as a project where I just wanted to get to know the new players in the Pacers games better, and it turned into a really good talking experience, content experience. And so we're going to do it again this year. Only 5 new players, but we're going to make it work. Today, we'll look at the Pacers' new players who came from other NBA teams. So James Wiseman, Swider, and kind of Quenton Jackson, who's already with the Pacers, but only for about 5 months now total. And then the next time we do this, we'll do the college guys. So Johnny Furphy, Enrique Freeman, and Tristan Newton. And again, how this works is this is not meant to be a total encapsulation of the player's skill set, strengths, weaknesses. This is meant to be how they can help. If this player is contributing on the Pacers, what are the things that are likely going well? What does history suggest they do well in a way that can help the Pacers should that continue to translate into the NBA floor? And it's more of a strengths focus because of that. And I really enjoy this because I watch a lot of tape, listen to some interviews, all sorts of stuff. Let's start with James Wiseman, who it was a lot of fun to dive into. Just such a unique sort of prospect to like really get under the hood with. I've obviously watched all these guys before, but to combining stuff in the way I do with numbers and all that was a really good time with Wiseman specifically because there's so many stuff that you just like, whoa, really? For starters, like Myles Turner just did an interview this week. We'll talk about it a little bit in the third segment. He was on Jeff Teague's podcast. He was talking about the Pacers and their rebounding. He said, yeah, James Wiseman's going to help with that. Right. And that's totally true. And that is the headliner of the James Wiseman conversation to me. If you look at the how he can help part for the Pacers, beyond that, he's very good at it. The Pacers need that thing. But last year, James Wiseman's rebound rate, 17.2%. That would have been top 20 in the NBA if he played enough minutes to qualify for the advanced stat leaderboards. Now, he would have had to sustain that rate for that extra minutes. Right. And if every player could do that, they would. But he played over 1,000. It's not like we're talking about a small sample size of minutes to reach that. And that's not far off of like what he's shown before. He had a 17% rebound rate in 2022-23, also 16.3% for his career. I find that to be totally reasonable. Right. If you are that big and that fast, then we'll talk more about his speed later. Right. You're going to be good at rebounding all the time. Like top 25 players in the league level of rebounder for Wiseman, and seeing it with the numbers and seeing it more on the tape, it just is so valuable, right? And the trouble with rebounding types like Sheboy is you got to force the misses, but if it's there and it's available, he's going to get them. In fact, the NBA they track contested rebounds. Wiseman grabbed over 2 contested rebounds per game, right? So even when he's battling with someone else, he's going to get it, right? And that's super valuable and something that will totally pop on this Pacers team as a skill that they kind of need. The second thing I kind of dove into is his finishing in the paint. 88% of his shots last year inside 10 feet on one. I think that's great, right? If you're good at that, do that. And that has been his range for a lot of his career. Over half of those 88% shots were within 3 feet, right? He loves to get guys inside and finish right around the basket because he's huge. And a lot like the clips, I tweet like one group of clips of stuff that I looked at for all these players. For Wiseman, I did ones where he would get a switch, whether it was a pick and roll or just him roaming the perimeter and a switch happened. And he just, boom, went at the guy and put him under the rim and scored. One was on Derek White. One was DeAndre Hunter. And I forget the third Hawks one. I want to say it was DeJounte Murray, 2 different Hawks games. But the second he got the small on him, he just turned around, opened up, looked huge, put him under the rim, bucket, right? And that kind of stuff, when he's in that area and he's got this advantage, he's going to score. 75% of his shots from inside 5 feet dropped last year. And if you just look in the restricted area, that's an even higher percentage, right? He's that strong. He's that tall. He's going to finish, right? It's very impressive. Another thing, people view this as a negative for some reason, which is stupid. Over 43% of his made shots last year were dunks. And people always, oh, dunks, it's so easy. But like, no, if everybody could dunk every time, they would. It's the high percentage shot. 25% basically of his total shot attempts with Detroit last year were dunks. Like, that's crazy. That volume of dunks was top 30 in the league. But Wiseman was the only guy in that top 30. He had the lowest minutes of anybody in the top 30. And in fact, only 3 guys were under 1,300 minutes last year. The other 2 were Derek Lively and Trayce Jackson-Davis among that top 30. Wiseman didn't even hit 1,100 minutes, right? So if he had, let's say, 1,500, he's probably top 15-10 in dunks last year. Like, he gets to the basket, he shows some power, and he slams it all over somebody, right? The zoomed out picture of his offensive game, when you watch him, when you really dig into the numbers, when you look at clips of how he's doing what he's doing, is so obvious. This was the pitch when they signed him that I said, he's huge and fast, right? Even if you view some negatives in his game, that can be something if you're that large, right? And so it's so obvious to see in the tape and in the numbers, and that all stood out to me quite a bit. If you go to the play type data, transition, dominant, right? Hey, that will help with the Pacers, absolutely. Again, very fast, 99.2 percentile. Last year, he shot 83.8% in transition, 1.6 points per possession. If you do that on the Pacers, you're going to fit just fine, all right? And this reminds me a little bit of what we're talking about with Obi Toppin last year, where he was so good in transition, needed to pick up some other pieces of his game, and he did, right? And Wiseman said he came to the Pacers for development opportunities. Well, hey, there you go. But that one stood out to me. Pacers were 3rd highest in the league in transition frequency last year. Wiseman also 82nd percentile in post-ups. He probably shouldn't do that much. No NBA team does. But when he does, it's good. That's why I talked about him with the smalls. 78.5 percentile on putbacks, right? Again, smaller guy on him. He gets the board. It's a basket. So offensively, all the stuff you expect to pop for James Wiseman really do, but they pop in a major way where it's like, man, if this could just be more consistent all the time, wow, this is impressive stuff. The other thing that I noticed, this was an observation that made me go farther under the hood stat-wise. Man, if he could just, when James Wiseman catches the ball, if he makes a decision on what he's doing and how he wants to do it, right away, snap, Greg Popovich, half a second go style. He looks unstoppable. It's when he hesitates and lets the defense load up or catch up or get into his space that he's not as good. You know, the more you watch him, you're like, the speed really matters here. If you look at his stats last year, right, if he caught it and his touch with the ball was less than 2 seconds, he shot 64% from the field. Phenomenal, right? Over that on twos. If his touch time was 2 to 6 seconds, he shot under 50%, and he only had a couple the whole season. Very infrequent. 0.7% of his shots where his touch was longer than 6 seconds. He shot 50% on those, right? Just go. If he catches and he just goes, right? Again, I keep talking about the same kind of thesis, but the speed-power combo is just so threatening. Even the year before, where he was half with Detroit, half with Golden State. 63.2% on quick touches, 41.7% if he took some time. That is the standout thing to me that will define how great he is and how good he can help the Pacers. That was not a sentence, but that one I didn't even put in my article about this. I write a lot of this information down. And that was one I wanted to get in here, that speed and speed of his decision-making in mind will matter just as much as his actual speed. Defensively, if he actually contests, it's a good contest. His defensive field goal percentage on every single shot type, granted, flawed NBA tracking data, but I'd like to hope, I don't know this, but I'd like to hope it's flawed equally for every player. Players missed more often on just about every zone on the court with him as the primary defender last year. Granted, that means he's the closest defender, which is not always the case, but still interesting value there. And again, size, speed, you're going to contest good shots. So lots of stuff that's like, oh, maybe Wiseman helps this way. Maybe it's this way. Maybe it's this way. It's up to the Pacers to try to get it to be all those things. It's also up to Wiseman, but the high-level sales pitch, especially statistically, is just like harness the power and speed inside 5 feet on both ends, and you've got something here, right? It's very tantalizing to dive into this stuff and look at it and look at the footage and see it all come together. Again, this is just how they can help. This is not a total package of their game kind of deal, but I walked away really enamored by some of the stuff, even though he does have the warts that we've talked about, but that's not what this is about today. And I found his exercise very fun. I've done this for a lot of guys over the last couple seasons, and the Wiseman was very fun. Cole Swider's was also pretty fun because that dude can find some space from beyond the arc. We're going to dive into Cole Swider, how he can help the Pacers. Spoiler alert, the most important skill for him is shooting. And we're going to talk a lot about that here coming right up. Before we talk some Cole Swider, we're going to talk about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you were looking for. Plus, with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time. You're going to get your money back because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash, with all the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay's Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. We are back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. I was on Locked On NBA 2 days ago, so check that out for your second listen potentially. Not a ton going on in the association right now. Julius Randle, maybe no extension traction at all with the Knicks. Locked On Knicks could be the place to go for more on that. Let's keep going here on Locked On Pacers, looking at some of the Pacers new guys, how they can help the Pacers by looking at Cole Swider. Is he going to make the team? We'll see. That's not what we're talking about. What we are talking about is how, if he does make the team and he is required to play, the most likely outcome for his path to helping the Pacers. Now, this one's a lot different than Wiseman. Wiseman has played a lot in the NBA, 3,000 minutes, 150 games. You know, there's at least a sample of what this is on different teams, different contexts. That's great. Cole Swider has played a lot less than that in the pros, a lot less. He's much more of a G League player. His NBA time is 25 total games. So keep that in mind. And I primarily looked at NBA footage for this stuff, although I have dug into some Cole Swider G League stuff, which matters because his three-point percentage is bananas down there on a lot of attempts. And he's only taken 38 threes in the NBA, right? Like you make two in a row at that point, and you're upping your percentage by like a huge amount, right? So we're not talking about a very large sample size. In fact, if Cole Swider made two straight threes, his three-point percentage would go up by over 3.5%. So keep that in mind as we dive into this. But looking at Cole Swider and what he does, he shoots. He shoots, and he shoots a lot in the pros. So this is between the Lakers time and the Heat time. Over 80% of his shots have been threes. We're talking like Wiseman in the paint level, but from three. He gets them up. He knows that that's what he's asked to do, and he makes it happen. And that matters, right? You want shooters to be shooters, and you want Cole Swider to be doing that, and that's what he did. Last year, 36.4% on his catch and shoot threes. Much better number in the G League. In the NBA, that's about average. You'd like that number to be higher, but I think there's a lot of ways to believe in the shooting because of the other indicators like the free throw percentage and the G League percentage and the Summer League percentages. Even Eric Spoelstra, who coached him last year, told the Miami Herald he's a great shooter. He really is. He's elite with what he does. And I think his stints in Sioux Falls have really impacted winning. That matters. And it's just a matter of the fit, timing, and opportunities with us, right? We could dive into, and we'll dive into some other stuff, but shooting is the highest level thing that he does. And the Heat are right to bet on that. They made Duncan Robinson into something. And now the hope is that Cole Swider could do that stuff. Last year, of his wide open threes he took, right, on the whole season, he made half of them in the NBA. That's very impressive. And the Pacers do a good job generating open threes for their shooters. His corner threes, he made half of those, right? That's another thing that if you're the Pacers, you hope you can harness or make possible is getting him open in the corners. In fact, his first season in the NBA, he made every three he took from the corner, 60% for his career. I had one corner three, I believe, in the clips I had of him doing some movement, shooting for catch and shoot threes with the Heat. So there's a lot of stats you can dive into with the shooting in the G League. 193 for 429 from three in his 2 seasons, 52 G League games. That's 45% in 50 games. That is a much more meaningful sample than the NBA. He probably has if you get his 3 G League games with the most minutes, you've probably reached his entire NBA career in minutes. And he shot it very well in the G League level. Now, if everybody who shot it well in the G League shot it well in the NBA, it'd be a lot easier to figure out who's good and who isn't. But I think the indicators are that Cole Swider can shoot it very well, which is why teams keep signing him, including the Pacers. And his stats just jump out and say, this guy can shoot. And a great shooter alone, a good shot, a great jump shot, one that forces a defense to react, that can get a player on the court, that can get you into games, right? Sometimes you're working backwards with a player. You say you're really athletic, you're really fast, you have all these tools. We're going to try to turn you into skill. Sometimes you have Cole Swider, so you're trying to do the opposite. You have a skill. Now we're trying to work you in. Can you be more athletic? Can you be faster? Can we train you to be, a little more versatile? It's not saying one's better than the other, but Swider is the route of specialist. This guy can really shoot it. If he's out there, defenses will have to think about him. He's going to wiggle free. He's going to get open. And he has positional size. He's tall. Cole Swider's 6'9", right? And I know he primarily is thought of and should be thought of as a 3-man, but he is bigger for that size. And on the Pacers specifically, I think his size would stand out if he got a significant amount of time on this team. That's 3 more inches over Aaron Nesmith, right? That's like a good amount. That's close to Pascal Siakam's size. He's got some height to him. And so similar to Wiseman, if he's close to his shot, to his man taking a shot, similar to Wiseman, his defensive field goal percentage from almost every area on the floor was good. He forced misses more often than expected for players from those spots. Now, similar to Wiseman, Cole Swider, not always contesting the shots he needs to be, or sometimes not in the right spots. That's not what we're talking about today. So keep that in mind as you hear that stat. But that stood out to me. I was like, whoa, his positional size matters there with the contests. 6'11" wingspan for Cole Swider. I don't remember where that came from because he was the last draft pre-wingspan data, so I had to look it up elsewhere. So in certain matchups, like if he can keep up with his man, or it's a defensive scheme that allows him to do his thing, maybe you can expect not awful defense from Swider, just regular bad. I don't know. I don't think he can get to average. But still, that was interesting to me, and so certainly worth tossing in here. Keeps the ball moving, right? Keeps it passing. When he's not shooting, he's not just holding it. He's not putting it on the floor too much, right? He reads the game well. That translates to defense also. But when you're passing that much or you keep it moving, you hope the guy doesn't turn it over very much. His rookie year, he had no turnovers, none with the Heat. Last year, he had 0 with the Lakers. Last year, he had 8 with the Heat. So not a high turnover player. Takes care of it, doesn't mess up that much, executes good contests. If his positioning's good, he's going to be impactful, right? And that matters quite a bit. And last year, the Heat were able to maintain their defensive rating when he was out there. It didn't go up or down. That's not just that's a positive, but for a player that I don't think of as an above average or even an average defender, that's impressive. Now, that's the Miami Heat, who are amazing at that kind of stuff, but still, I find that to be very interesting. On his very few attempts, he's finished well around the rim in the NBA. We're, again, talking about a super small sample, but when he's taken them, he's made them. If you're a high-volume shooter who does not try to do too much on offense, you keep the ball moving, you finish around the rim when you cut to the rim, you don't mess up that much, that can be something. That can have value to a team, especially in pinch minutes, and it's why teams keep signing, right? This is the 3rd straight year that he's entered a season and found a new home, despite going undrafted and needing to prove it. He's good at shooting. Teams really want that. Now, he's on a non-guaranteed 1-year deal. He's going to have to prove that he can do those things and be a little bit better of a defender on a team that needs defense. And he's not very quick. He's not super athletic. But, man, if he can hit the threes, if he can hit the catch-and-shoot threes on the Indiana Pacers, that's something, right? And so if you're at the Pacers, do you chase potential and skill with an athletic player for your final roster spots, or do you do something like this? Do you chase the skill and hope you can develop them into more? Not saying one or the other is right, but I do think it's interesting to look at what Cole Swider is, what he can be, what he's done in the past, and the fact that the Pacers are interested in him at all. Why? Well, it's because he can really shoot it. Watch any Sioux Falls game you can find full footage of. Find Heat Summer League games if you can. You'll see it. When he gets space, it's going up, and it's usually going in. Some of the clips I posted of him in the NBA, he even had one fading to the left for the Heat where he wiggled free from his defender and got space. It was just very pretty. That kind of shooter is valuable. I think Cole Swider can be that kind of shooter. It just hasn't happened in the NBA yet, even though there's a lot of indicators that it will happen at some point. The Pacers will hope this is the year. If he makes the team, Swider will hope it's the year if that should happen. And that's how Cole Swider can help the Pacers. Let's talk a little bit about Quenton Jackson, even though he's not new to the Pacers. And then we'll close out with some news here on this lovely Thursday. Before we get to all that, let's talk very quickly about the great folks over at FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel. They're America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you this time. Now, through September 22nd, basically the rest of calendar year summer, every FanDuel customer can bet $5 and get a 3-week, how about that, free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. 3 weeks free to watch the NFL as we get rolling. Colts, I believe, close out the preseason tonight. You can start watching them or whoever your favorite team is. I'll be interested to see if my childhood favorite team that I don't keep up with anymore, the Vikings, or anything interesting without their quarterback. And YouTube TV, getting me NFL Sunday Ticket could be a great way to do that. You can watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment. You can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockdown to download America's #1 sportsbook. Go check it out on FanDuel. And we're back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Your second listen, Locked On Wizards. They waived, Eugene Omoruyi yesterday ahead of a contract deadline. And we're about to talk about a player who played for the Wizards 2 years ago for 9 games, Quenton Jackson. So check out Locked On Wizards. Hear what's going on in the land of a team that is going to try to do something this season. We'll see. I posted clips of Quenton Jackson with the Wizards on my Twitter feed like an hour ago before this podcast, because he had some crafty finishes with that team. He would slither through 3 defenders and put up a shot and finish something tough. And last year at the Pacers, he played for the Pacers. So calling him a new player, really deep diving into him as much as I have other guys, I'm not going to do that. But he only played for 3 games in like 10 minutes or something. He took 1 shot attempt total. I don't think fans know a lot about him. I think fans saw him in Summer League. No one really watches the Mad Ants that much. He was really good for them. So we'll dive into him a little bit. And then we have another episode of the Meeting the New Guys series where I connect with other hosts who covered Pacers new players before, where someone will talk about Quenton Jackson, right, on that episode. So you'll learn about him a little bit there. Just some high-level stuff. His 1 shot attempt with the Pacers is kind of what he's all about. He got a screen from Jarris Walker. He hesitated for a bit. He got by his man. He got by the screener's defender. He got to the paint. He made a little move to get between those 2 defenders. So he got past 3 guys to get to the rim. He missed the layup, right? But that is what he can do. He finds those spaces to drive, create, make a defense react and rotate. And that's reflected by his super impressive free throw rate. It's over 50%. Now we're talking about an incredibly small sample. But that is the pitch for Quenton Jackson. He can create shots with his own shiftiness, even without a screen a lot of the time. He's a good steals guy. He led the Mad Ants in steals last year per game. He has a great NBA steal rate, over 4% with the Pacers. In fact, one of his 2 assists with the Pacers, he just completely stripped somebody, turned around at the floor and flipped it up to Kendall Brown. All right, that's kind of what you can expect from him. It is like this ball hawking steals guy. Way better off the bounce than on catch and shoot, right? So he can catch, assess, and make a play. And he shot 59.3% with the Wizards inside 15 feet. That's pretty good. You'd like it to be a little better, especially right at the rim. But if he could be a guy who doesn't need a screen all the time to get to the rim and make a defense rotate and finishes and is an okay enough passer and a good steals guy, the blueprint is there. It makes sense to me why you'd want to have that guy on your team and your break glass in case of emergency guard. Pacers clearly wanted him back. He's on a 2-way. So that's the Quenton Jackson high-level pitch. You'll hear more about him on an episode within the next week or so, but I don't want to get too in the weeds with him because he already played for the Pacers. You've seen him play either in Summer League or with the Pacers or with the Mad Ants. Let's close out today with news. We haven't done news for a while. I just keep adding stuff to the list until every news episode. I'm not sure when the next one's even going to be. So let's go. Okay, news. Obi Toppin had a camp in Indy. Campers came, about 40 of them inside Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Pretty cool that he came back to Indianapolis. He's kind of still here. He was at the Fever game on Sunday. And Obi, for the 2nd year in a row, I went to his camp in Dayton last year. He loves to go play one-on-one with the campers, but he's not the athlete that lets him score. He is trying and dunking and blocking, and they posted a video of it. But Obi Toppin back in Indy, hosting a camp, doing his thing, talking about his offseason. Johnny Furphy was on the Pacers. If you remember a couple weeks ago, we had Alex Riley on here, and he talked about a future interview coming up on his podcast, the Pacers. It was with Furphy. It was awesome. He talked about his summer league play, broke it down in pretty good detail, which I liked. And he also talked about the draft and falling to the second round and his emotions on going in night 2 after being in the green room and all that. He talked about having a chip on his shoulder. And I think the way he reacted to it was very interesting and revealing. I would highly recommend you check it out. I don't want to spoil it too much, but Pacers podcast, you can hear from Pacers rookie Johnny Furphy as he talks about all sorts of stuff and lots of Australian accents there. Speaking of Pacers players on podcasts, Myles Turner joined Jeff Teague's podcast, Club 520. They talked about lots of stuff. That podcast can be pretty long. This particular episode was not. It was a little longer, but barely than the length of most of these podcasts they're listening to right now. But they talked about lots of stuff. Myles Turner's career, his connection with Jeff Teague when they were teammates early in that time, and stuff Nate McMillan did not let happen for the team. And then the next era of Pacers basketball, and he talked about Tyrese Haliburton and Jarvis Walker and Pascal Siakam and all sorts of players in the team, the Knicks series, the Buckets, all of it. It was really good. It was really interesting stuff. He also talked about Wiseman, how he thinks Wiseman can help the team. I found that to be very interesting. Draymond, what am I saying? Pascal Siakam and Andrew Nembhard's agent, Todd Ramasar, went on the record with Sportskeeda talking about lots of stuff with his clients, why he believes the Pacers are the right spot for them, why he believes in the Pacers as a team and as a franchise as they go through this contract stuff. He expects a big year from Pascal, who just built a gym at his house. Apparently, so now he can work and get going. Obviously, into Nembhard's future as well, and what he can do with the team. Something he said in there that I thought was interesting was talking about Rick Carlisle and the way he prioritizes regular season minutes to have guys ready for the playoffs. And I thought that was extremely noteworthy and meaningful to hear that from an agent. And that certainly worked last year. Pacers were healthy and had fresh legs for much of the postseason, and Nembhard and Siakam played the whole time and played very well. Mark Medina posted that interview with Todd Ramasar and Sportskeeda. Highly recommend you check it out. It's very good. There's a fly flying all over my office right now, so sorry if you see me shaking my hands or stuff shaking. I cannot get it out of here. But that was really good stuff. Draymond, the reason I said his name is he's my next line item. His podcast of late, his own show, and he was also on Club 520. He talked a lot about James Johnson and what makes him such a valuable vet and how he helps the Pacers and gives them some swagger. So for those of you who keep doing he should be an assistant coach thing, just listen to that. It'll make a lot more sense. He also talked about Andrew Nembhard. He loves him some Andrew Nembhard and his tenacity and what he brings to the Pacers and how good he can be. Draymond's pretty good at podcasting. I think so is Jeff Teague. I found his insights to be very valuable. Some Mad Ants players headed overseas. Reed Travis is in Japan. Pedro Bradshaw is in Australia. Mojave King is in Australia. Darius McGee is in Germany. So keep adding to the list of Mad Ants from last year not returning to the team for this year, looking for opportunities in other places, except for Kyle Mangus, who is coming back, and he was on yesterday's Locked On Pacers. He signed a Exhibit 10 with the Pacers last year. He said he's going to again this year, which congrats to him. That interview is very revealing. You'll learn a lot about Jarvis Walker and the Mad Ants and Kyle, but also the fact that we learned Mangus is signing an Exhibit 10 is noteworthy because the Pacers don't have 3 roster spots. They have 2, right? They have their 15 guys plus Cole Swider plus their 3 2As. That's 19, right? And they have Kisei Tominaga, Josiah Jordan James, and Kyle Mangus with agreed to or reportedly agreed to 2As. That's 22 players. You can only carry 21 in the offseason. That's not to say something's wrong, right? Last year, they signed and waived 8 players during training camp to get their G League rights or to have their G League rights with Exhibit 10s. But the fact that there's more players with Exhibit 10s coming than actual available spots for camp probably means you're going to see the same thing last year as this year, where you just see these guys signed and waived the next day, and they aren't really in camp. It's possible some of them are, but all the roster spots and 2-way spots largely accounted for. And what we've seen from this franchise the last couple of years, I would bet that they're not, but I don't know that. But now that we know for sure, and this was going to be the case anyway, given how many Mad Ants have left, that there's more Exhibit 10 guys than spots available, expect to see lots of roster churn there. LeBron James had some very cool thought. This was not really news. I just thought this was cool. Tyrese Haliburton tweeted photos of him wearing LeBron Team USA jerseys as a kid and then him being LeBron's teammate. And LeBron replied to him and saw it and said it was super cool. Haliburton did the same thing with Kevin Durant. So really cool gesture from LeBron to just see that and not, I would find it hard if I was an athlete and LeBron was my favorite player to and I was on his team to toe that line of fanning and being a pro and knowing you're really good. And I think Ty did a really good job of it. And LeBron clearly respected that. I would highly recommend you looking into that stuff as well. That's hardly news, but I just found it very interesting and kind of a cool moment among two very high-profile athletes. That is all for today's and the most recent Pacers news of the month. Again, it's August. This is the most dead time of the NBA calendar. I'll try to keep turning stuff in here as stuff pops up. We've gotten a couple things that are legit in the last 3-4 days. So the next news will be extremely interesting. Tomorrow, we'll see. I have an idea for my show if it's just me, and if I can get enough stuff coordinated, we might have guests tomorrow. We'll see. If not, we'll have guests Monday. So you're either going to hear about fun lineups I want to see, or you're going to learn more about Enrique Freeman, Cole Swider, and Quenton Jackson, people who have covered them before. And then next week, we're going to do What Are the Odds, reviewing last year's and looking ahead at this year's. We're going to do best seasons by a small forward, all sorts of fun new stuff. We're going to look at moves from around the NBA this offseason that impact the Pacers, that weren't made by the Pacers. All sorts of good stuff is coming here on Locked On Pacers. So don't miss it. Subscribe, watch on YouTube, do whatever you do. Thank you all for tuning in. I'm on Twitter at Tony R. East, and the show is at Locked On Pacers, so you don't miss an episode. That's the best way to see what all the topics are for an episode every single day. Thank you all for tuning in. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you very soon.